And asking my purple Santa hat here in honor of Festives. I don't think I've shaved since Thanksgiving, so maybe I'm going with the Mocember thing here. But New Year's Eve beckons, and that means we must be playing the Cincinnati Bengals. Thankfully, this one is here this weekend. It has been flexed from 1 o'clock till 4:25. I finally found the one guy that's happy they flexed this thing because it means Dave Lapham gets an extra crab cake here in Baltimore. He is a longtime O-lineman, one-time employee of Donald J. Trump as a member of the New Jersey Generals, and now the longtime, almost 3-decade voice of Cincinnati Bengals football on their radio broadcast, television work, and all that good stuff. Dude, you got to be dying when the offensive line is the reason the team's not any good, right? As an O-lineman yourself, this had to be a tough season for you to watch this thing, right?
Yeah, it was, Nestor. There's no question. By the way, happy holidays to you and yours.
Same at you.
Yeah, that was definitely the storyline of the season. It was going to be the most highly scrutinized, and it turned out to be the case. Didn't have to be a football Einstein of any sort. I mean, my thought was, along with a lot of other people, that if the offensive line gelled, they could potentially win 10 games and be a playoff caliber team. But if it didn't, they'd struggle to win 6. And that's exactly how the season played out. And now the offensive line that just played last week is just, jumbled and reassembled. And you have a guard playing left tackle in Clint Bowling. You have Eric Winston, a journeyman, a long-time player at the right tackle position, and got a couple of rookie guards rotating in there, getting some snaps at the guard spot. So it's been, musical chairs down the stretch here, but they did play well last week. But the biggest storyline of the season was the overall inconsistency in the play of the offensive line.
Dave, I guess talking to people there this week, it's obviously all about Marvin, right? What's going to happen to Marvin? What's going to happen to Marvin? And I guess that will set the trajectory of the franchise, whether it's Hugh Jackson, whether it's somebody coming back, staying in, whether Marvin's going up top and hiring coaches. I mean, who knows? But there's going to be palpable change around there this year, right? I think you feel that sort of blowing in the wind that it can't continue to go on the way it's been. And certainly on the offensive side, there's some real retooling that needs to be done.
Yeah, I would not shock anybody that there is major change that's going to take place. I think that everybody close to the organization certainly wasn't stunned by the report that came out from Adam Schefter. It was just the timing of it with 15 days left in the regular season and all the uncertainty and upheaval that something like that can cause. But yeah, there's everybody's best guess is that they're going to go in a different direction. And honestly, I think Marvin can hold his head high with the fact that he's going to leave this organization in a much better place than it was when he came here for sure. There's no question on a lot of levels.
Dave Lapham joining us here. He is the longtime color analyst of all things Cincinnati Bengals. Makes a mean bowl of chili, too, from what I understand. But it'll be crab cakes here this weekend. Boy, you talk about Marvin and tying this game together. And all week here, I preach hazard, right? On the backside of a blocked punt last week that opened the door for Jacoby Brissett to tie a game to, force the Ravens into a really uncomfortable place. And obviously this game's been flexed out. I know I've made you aware of how many empty seats you're going to see this week. And I've written this series about the ghost of Baltimore, a past where we did have a football team for 12 years and present, which is we have a team that might be making the playoffs that the city has sort of gone to sleep on. But the future hinges on winning a game like this if you're John Harbaugh, Joe Flacco, Terrell Suggs, Eric Weddle, the veteran guys that have been around, or Ozzie Newsome. Because when you don't make the playoffs, when you're supposed to win at home, that really drives a stake into the heart of the franchise. And certainly for Marvin, where the only ring in his closet says Baltimore on it, and he's been my pal for 20-some-odd years, I can't imagine that if this is the end for him in Cincinnati or the end of him as an NFL coach after all of these years, winning in Baltimore would get him carried off the field here if it ended the Ravens season, because that's what you're supposed to do when you coach the Cincinnati Bengals. So there is real opportunity here, and the notion that they played well against the Lions, the notion that there is no Jimmy Smith and there is an A.J. Green, but there's some treachery involved here and a lot at stake for the Ravens.
There is. It's a very interesting matchup when you look at it, Nestor, because Marvin Lewis's history with the Baltimore Ravens still is part of a record of the fewest points allowed in a 16-game season with that dominant defense of the Baltimore Ravens. The season starts out in Cincinnati, home game, first time they've played at home to start a season in quite a while, and played pitifully. You know, they -5 in the turnover department. Andy Dalton has 4 interceptions and loses a fumble that's forced by Suggs. They get in the red zone 3 times, can't even kick a field goal. You know, they have 2 turnovers and lose the ball on downs. Just miserable. I mean, as bad as it could be. After 2 weeks, the offensive coordinator is let go. So it all starts to unravel, you know, with Baltimore at home. And then you go full circle, and here it is to end the season. And the Cincinnati Bengals could potentially knock the Baltimore Ravens out of the playoffs, just like they did the week before to the Detroit Lions. So it's an interesting twist with the background that Marvin Lewis has in the division with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, and Cincinnati Bengals, for him to start the season, which could be his last, start the season against Baltimore in a very unsightly manner, and to finish the season against Baltimore with what could be, if it goes the way that he hopes, a major upset that would knock a team out of the playoffs, a division rival. It has a lot of twists. It has a lot of storylines. There's no question about it. And I think that Marvin Lewis felt good about walking off Paul Brown Stadium, his last home game potentially as a head coach here with a victory. And I think he'd feel great about walking off Baltimore Ravens territory with a victory in his last head coaching game as a Cincinnati Bengal. So it's going to be an interesting weekend for sure.
Oh, a lot of history with Gunther, too, and I know he and Flacco are somewhat pals from their South Jersey roots back in the day, but, Gunther's always got the defense ready to play. I know at the linebacker position there's a real problem there, and as there is in probably 15 places right now, personnel matchups and injuries in Week 17.
Yeah, the linebacker position is decimated by injury and started to get some players back last week. Vontaze Burfict came back for about a half. Right at the end of the half, he sacked Matthew Stafford and basically separated his right shoulder on the same play going to the turf. He didn't sack him, but he forced him to throw errantly, throw an interception that Vinny Ray picked off, but his pressure was key to that. And then that was the last play that he played, so he's not going to be in this football game. So that's obviously the heart and soul of the defense. I mean, he brings a lot of juice on every level. Vinny Ray played through a 12-stitch laceration inside his mouth last week. I mean, he'll be the stabilizer. He'll be the guy. But a lot of young rookie linebackers are going to be on the football field. And I'll tell you, the guy, my dark horse guy, the guy that bugs me a little bit or bothers me if I were a linebacker would be Danny Woodhead. The fact that he's such a great receiver out of the backfield, getting him matched up on those linebackers. I'll tell you, if you take a look at the Minnesota Viking tape, pop that in. And they had running backs just on simple wheel routes, check downs, catching the ball 3 yards down the field and making 40 yards out of the thing because they were so uncovered they would just completely let go with assignment mistakes. So hopefully they're beyond that type of thing. But I think Danny Woodhead might be a little bit of a factor in this football game with his ability, to be a check down safety valve release target for Joe Flacco.
Boy, the Andy Daltons and the Joe Flaccos and the Matt Ryans all look good when they got protection, when nobody's in front of them and nobody can catch the ball, and when you can't run the ball. A guy like Andy Dalton, that was the magic touch, right? The Red Rocket and making the playoffs every year. And, famous for losing playoffs games is, what Marvin and he are, there in this era. And, but famous for making the playoffs. It's no good when all of that goes away, your quarterback can go from a plus to a minus real quickly when he doesn't have any time and doesn't have a running game.
No doubt. I mean, the running game has been non-existent basically for most of the season. They ran the ball, well last week, and that was a big factor in their success. For the first time in a long time, they ran 19 more plays than the opponent. I mean, they've just been outpossessed all season long. They're barely over 27 minutes time of possession, 32nd in the NFL. They've run 852 plays and have had 1,017 run against them. So that's an imbalance that is tough to deal with. And a lot of that starts with not being able to run the ball a lick. I mean, they're 30th in the NFL in yards per carry. They're 31st in yards rushing per game. And they find themselves behind the chains all the time as a result of that. So if they can get in third and manageable situations and stay ahead of the chains, they're okay. But they have not been able to do that all that much, and therefore it exposes the defense. The defense is on the field way too long, and it exposes your quarterback because teams are just pinning their ears back and rushing the quarterback and not really having much regard for the running game. So, and plus, when you're not able to run the football at all, there's no lanes down the football field to throw it. I mean, the seams between linebackers and safeties are big. When you can run it, the linebackers have to at least respect it and take a step downhill. When you can't run it at all, they're just bailing out of there, and they're taking deep drops, and there's no holes to throw the football down the football field. So there's a big ripple effect when your running game is as stagnant and inconsistent as it's been for the Bengals all year long.
Dave Lapham is the longtime offensive lineman and now longtime color analyst for all things Cincinnati Bengals football. They're coming in here looking to wreck our Festivus and our New Year's Eve on the late afternoon game that Harbaugh was critical about in his Tuesday press conference leading up to the week. And this game gets flexed out. I guess if you don't want the game flexed out, you got to win enough football games for this one not to matter. It matters for a whole bunch of teams here, and certainly the tectonic plates of the division shifting here with Marvin potentially leaving. Who knows? Hugh Jackson may be out in Cincinnati, might be running your program 2 weeks from now for all we know, given the rumor-ramas that will plague a lot of places here going into the weekend and into Monday as far as who's going to be coaching where and when and for how long. But the teams that make the playoffs smell pretty good in the offseason, even if they lose in the first week or the second week. And I know we both have experience with losing playoff games in January because only one team wins a Super Bowl. But this is a whole different level here. If the Ravens lose, don't make the playoffs, what happens with Harbaugh? What happens with Ozzie? What happens with the future of the organization here? Certainly Cincinnati's going to have change. Cleveland's already, the change is coming. But in Pittsburgh, it just life goes on, right? I mean, it really is an incredible thing. And as much as the Pittsburgh-Baltimore thing's been this hard, rugged rivalry, boy, the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh things just become what's wrong with the NFL instead of what's right with the NFL, right, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh rivalry has turned into a situation where, my assessment of it is when we played the Pittsburgh Steelers when they were winning Super Bowls in the 70s and even in the early 80s. It was physical. I mean, there was a lot of big hits that took place and went on. But after the game, the guys could go to a local establishment and crack a beer together. These guys will crack a beer bottle over each other's head. I mean, they can't even. It's turned into something that it doesn't need to be, and somehow it has to be corralled a little bit, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the competition committee and everybody that's going to review all this stuff during the off season. And but you are making an excellent point when you look at the uncertainty of almost all franchises in the AFC North except the Pittsburgh Steelers. They just keep cranking along. 3 head coaches since the Vietnam War. Harbaugh, if he loses the game to the Bengals, could be on the hot seat. Hugh Jackson, Marvin Lewis. Look at the rest of the division. But the Pittsburgh Steelers just keep rolling along like Old Man River. There's no question about it. I mean, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be at least 6, maybe as many as 10 coaching changes. Say there's right in the middle. Say there's 8. 25% of the league. 25% of the league could turn over, in this off season. So now you're competing with a lot of other franchises for head coaches, and a big market like New York City is open. So, a place like that, they're going to compensate. And how much control is there involved? Compensation and control. So if you're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, what they might do, I mean, I think fans in general will be saying, how are we going to compete with a lot of these other franchises in the NFL, depending on who they are and what their compensation level is going to be and what kind of control they're going to give that head coach.
Well, the other thing we got going on, and first of all, I don't think Harbaugh's in trouble if they lose, but I think it certainly gets talked about and it becomes a massive issue for this team that they didn't make the playoffs again and somehow losing to a lame duck 6-win team to come in here at the end for if anything were to go wrong. And I felt that way a few days ago about the Indianapolis game where, something did go wrong at the end and it got a little crazy the last 5 minutes of the game, and you don't want that. That being said, Harbaugh's never lost a game like this, where it's sort of all riding on him. And this team was at 1.4-5. This was a sub-500 team, sort of on the road to nowhere and losing 41-0 over there in Wembley to the Jacksonville Jaguars, looking even worse against the Steelers when they got home. And the knee has played so poorly here, and the fans have gone away. You're not going to hear that third down thing that you're used to, Dave, here because we don't have enough people in the stadium right now. So there's been a lot going on with the franchise here, but certainly for the Ravens, you're going to get a different look than you saw in Week 1. I mean, a different look at Flacco. The offense is different. Woodhead Armstead, as you pointed out, who made a big difference, at least in the first drive in Cincinnati, and then disappeared for 12 weeks. But all that being said, this is a completely different team. And when the schedule comes out, you see Baltimore and Cincinnati in Week 1 and Week 17. I don't think you really realize how different the teams are going to be at that point.
And when you look at it, look at the shuffling that's gone on in the offensive line alone. I mean, both offensive lines are so different than when they lined up against each other in Week 1. I mean, Suggs basically wrecked the game for the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 1. The 3 tackles that he played against in that game are not even available to the Bengals. One is on injured list with respect to an irregular heartbeat. And Fisher's he's not going to be playing obviously the rest of the season. Has been playing for a while. Andre Smith is on IR with a knee injury. Sergio Gobwehi didn't play last week with a shoulder injury, and there's a big question if he's going to play at all this week as well. So now you've got totally different guys at the tackle position. You've got backup players at the tackle position that came off of the Bengals practice squad and other teams' practice squad. So. I'm looking at the offensive line of the Baltimore Ravens, and when you see a guy the caliber of the perennial Pro Bowler Marshall Yanda not in that lineup, I mean, now you're saying, geez, that's a different group up front there. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see who does assume command and control of the line of scrimmage on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's going to dictate. Usually in the AFC North, that's going to dictate how the outcome of these games are determined. And, the biggest thing is respecting the football. That's the thing to me. As I look at the Ravens, at their season, they really have taken care of the football and obviously taken it away. I mean, they lead the league in that area. They're third in the NFL in fewest penalties, third in fewest penalty yards.
Well, those things play well, right? Just fundamentally, when you're talking Joe Ball coach, if you say, we're not going to turn the ball over, we're going to take the ball away, and we're not going to have penalties, the rest of your team can stink, but if you do those things, right?
You're in every game.
You're not going to be 2-14, right?
No question. And in this matchup, we've talked about this many times, but respecting the ball is huge in this one. With Marvin Lewis as head coach, when the Bengals are plus in the turnover department against Baltimore, they're 10-0. When they're minus, they're 2-10, including -5 in the opener this year. When it's even, they're 5-2. So
-5. You don't say that often, do you? In any football game, right? -5 in a game. Wow, right?
-5, four interceptions and a lost fumble. And I mean, if the Bengals, by their history says, if they don't lose the turnover ratio, they're 15-2. If they do, they're 2-10. So this one is literally about not putting yourself on your schedule, and that's what Baltimore has done. They don't get penalized. The 16 giveaways are tied for 6th fewest in the NFL. Their 33 takeaways lead the league. So they say, look, you're going to have to come beat us. We're not going to beat ourselves. And like you said, when you have that mentality, you can win 10 football games instead of 2.
And then it all goes to hell when you get a punt block by the Indianapolis Colts with a couple minutes left to go on a cold day. Yeah, literally, it's nutty. Dave Lapham joining us here, the longtime voice of all things Cincinnati. Dude, I know you're doing pro camps. I want you to tell my audience about what you do out there, certainly during the holiday season. Anytime I have a guest on doing any good work in the community, I know you've been doing stuff at Cincinnati for like 4 decades now, man.
Yeah, pro camps is a nice organization, unique opportunity they give to kids from military families or inner city kids that, unfortunately, for the military family, they lost one parent, and in some cases, God forbid, have lost both parents, and they're in financial hardship, and we provide them and inner city kids that can't afford the opportunity to go to these camps. And there are camps that we do with professional players, NFL players, Major League Baseball players, NBA players, coaches, as well as players all over the country. And it's great. What goes on with the military kids, it's kind of a rally at each camp, and it's kind of a heartwarming deal to see how the kids all interact with each other, and friendships are made that are going to last a long time, and just giving opportunities to kids that would never even realize it or ever dream of having the chance to do it. It's special to watch it all unfold before your eyes, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of players associated with it, including A.J. Green, Ben Roethlisberger, Dak Prescott, Antonio Brown. I'm just looking at Jason Witten, looking over here. It is procamps.com is the way to find that. Hey, dude, we will see you here. You bring the chili, I'll bring the crab cakes, and we'll bring the champagne and toast out to 2018. And I'm going to tell you the same thing I want to tell Marvin. Don't come in here wrecking our season, man. I mean, come on, man. I mean, don't do that to me, Lapham.
I hear you, Nestor. I hear you. I look forward to catching up with you and you the all-time best.
I know. It's just business, just business. We'll see you soon, man. There he goes, Dave Lapham out in Cincinnati, the longtime radio color analyst and longtime guard. Also played for Donald Trump's USFL Generals back in the 1980s as well. I have written The Ghost of Baltimore Football, past, present, and future out at WNST.net. You'll also hear that here on the air as well as in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. Nasty at WNST.net finds me 24 hours a day. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Don't forget, the morning newspaper ships to your email inbox. It's 7 a.m. each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month heading into 2018. Never any commitment there. They will get you into shape during this winter and working off the cookies and the eggnog that have almost wrecked a man of my age here during the holiday season. You can find me anytime, anywhere, nasty at WNST.net. We are WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.